Hey there and welcome to the channel. You're watching Delight in My Library. Today we're going to be talking about Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Obviously, Brandon Sanderson needs no introduction in science fiction and fantasy communities today. If, however, you've been living underneath a rock for the last almost 20 years, here's a quick rundown. Brandon Sanderson debuted with his novel Elantris in 2005. Since then, he has published the Mistborn Saga and the Stormlight Archives, both New York Times #1 best-selling series. Additionally, he finished The Wheel of Time after the unfortunate passing of Robert Jordan in 2007. Last month, he ran the most successful Kickstarter of all time, earning almost $42 million in just a month. So that's Brandon Sanderson. Obviously a very successful and prolific writer. Today we're talking about his second novel, Mistborn, The Final Empire. It's pretty hard to talk about Mistborn in an objective way for me. I read Mistborn for the first time when I was in the 8th grade, and I've since read it almost a dozen times, and it's really shaped my taste in fiction, my perspective on life, in ways that I can't even categorize or quantify. I'm going to do my best to be objective, but I did pick it as my first review for a reason. It's a book that I can talk about without needing to do research, without needing to think about it. I know this book, and it is deeply meaningful to me. So, a quick rundown. Mistborn, The Final Empire, takes place in a high fantasy setting in the city Luthadel. It follows our protagonist Vin, a young 16-year-old girl, as she navigates the seedy underbelly of the capital city. She soon becomes embroiled in a plot to overthrow the Lord Ruler and free the working class of the city. In this book, you will find political intrigue, magic, and a world unlike anything you've ever seen before. So, a quick breakdown. I've decided to use a true 10-star rating system. That means that if a book is given 5 out of 10 stars, it is exactly average. If a book is given 10 out of 10 stars, it is a perfect book. 0 out of 10 stars, it doesn't exist. That being said, most books are going to hang out around a 5-star rating. There are going to be some below, some above, but a 5-star is not by any means a bad rating. It is an average rating. It is a good enough book. So I just want to clarify that before I have people screaming in the comments that I'm underrating this book or any other book I might review in the future. I'm also going to subdivide my ratings into various different categories ranging from character development, plot, prose, and anything else that comes to mind for any individual book. However, the subratings are not actually going to add into an average for the overall rating. I'm just simply going to be highlighting the specific goods and bads of each individual book which I rate and separating them off into their own category. So for Mistborn, The Final Empire, I'm going to give the characters a 10 out of 10. Look, if I'm being honest, they're not the best characters ever written. However, to me, they are. Vin and Elend and Sazed and Kelsier are some of my favorite characters in all of fiction. I mean, I'm looking right now at my cat Vin. I'm not going to try to get her because... oh, whatever, I'll get her. Look, I've named my pets after these characters. I have a dog, Spook, in the other room right now. These characters mean a lot to me. Okay, down you go. So, if I'm being perfectly objective, I would probably give the character work in Mistborn The Final Empire a 7 or an 8 out of 10. However, in my very biased opinion, I cannot give them anything lower than a 10. These characters mean the world to me, and they have deeply influenced me in very personal ways. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I was in 8th grade the first time that I read this book, and I really grew up with these characters, with Elend, with Spook, not so much in this book, but in the later books in the series, with Vin and with Sazed. I grew and learned about life through the lens of these characters' struggles in a deep and profound way. As far as plot goes, I'm going to give Mistborn: The Final Empire a rating of 7 out of 10 stars. There are twists, there are turns, there are surprises, and there are mysteries. Surely. As the tagline of the series itself goes, there's always another secret. That being said, I think that this might be one of those places in which my over-reading of the series has actually done me a bit of a disservice. I can't really objectively view whether or not this is a good original plot. It is solid, it is well-paced, it is very well executed. I just don't know at this point in my life, after reading it so many times, whether or not it's really all that original. Brandon Sanderson describes this book as Ocean's 11 meets My Fair Lady, and that is a fair description of the plot. However, it is very safe. The twists and the turns are more in the story elements, the world building and the magic and learning things that you didn't know, not necessarily in the plot being radically shaped by the twists in this book in the series. That definitely does change for later books. However, in this one, I think that it is played rather safe. It is definitely not something that's ever been... It is definitely something that hadn't quite been done before in fantasy when it was published in 2006. As some of you may know, this book was heavily marketed as the prophesied hero has arisen and failed. Now the Dark Lord rules. That's also a fair description of this book. However, despite being a unique take on a trope in the fantasy genre, it is still played rather safe. I'm going to give the prose work in this book actually the lowest rating of anything in the book. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Brandon Sanderson has never claimed that his prose were intended to be rosy, flowery, beautiful. He describes his prose as a window, something for you to look through and see the story. And that is a fair description. But this book in particular has what I believe, unfortunately, to be the worst prose work of any book Brandon has written. That's not to say that I dislike Brandon or his writing style or his prose. That is to say, this is what I believe to be his worst work. There are good moments, for sure. There's quippy lines, there's things that stand out as splendid writing in what is frankly, honestly, an average book for the most part. By the way, I guess I should have said spoiler warning. However, that is it in the first 5 chapters of the book, so I guess retroactive spoiler warning? However, there are also some lines that are very rough. Especially what comes to mind is the first scene where Vin meets Kelsier's crew, where they're hanging out in her old boss's bar room, and Ham comes in, and Clubs comes in, and Breeze comes in, and that scene in particular has rather choppy prose, as he kind of has to just hammer down 8 distinct types of magic down the reader's throat as quickly and efficiently as he can, and I think that he does a much better job at that sort of thing in other books in later times, doing them in much more integrated ways. In that scene, it's very much, they come in, I'm the strong guy, I'm the soother, I'm, that sort of thing. That being said, the follow-up scene, I can't remember if it's with Sazed or Clubs, where... it's with Clubs. Everyone is left. Clubs had left in the middle of the meeting, said he didn't want to be involved, comes back at the end, and asks Kelsier, so you're serious? That, I think, is actually one of the better scenes in the whole book, and it's immediately followed by what I consider a scene that seriously drags down the entire quality. So, all that being said, I'm going to give an overall rating to this book of 8 out of 10 stars. Like I said, the stars for the individual categories don't add up or average out to any sort of calculation for the final star rating. The final star rating is what I think of the book as a whole, and as the saying goes, the whole is better than the sum of its parts. And that definitely holds true with this book. This is a phenomenal book. It's actually not my favorite book that Brandon Sanderson has ever written, but it is perhaps the book that I've read the most. It is compulsively readable. It is endlessly revisitable. It's a damn fine book. So, that was my review for Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I'm going to be continuing this review series, and I'm going to hit all of the books in the Mistborn saga, as well as everything Brandon Sanderson has written, but that's all down the line. I do intend later this year to do a read-along for the second era of Mistborn in conjunction with the release of The Lost Metal in November. In addition to that, I also recently finished the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, so I am working on writing some reviews for those books, and I will be getting them to you as quickly as possible. I hope you can put up with the roughness in this video. This is my first time trying anything online, and I really appreciate any help, comments, suggestions that you'd be willing to send my way. It really means a lot to me, and I hope that you will stick it out through these rough first reviews as I kind of get my feet underneath me and figure out what exactly I'm doing on this channel. I appreciate all of the support, and I will see you next time. Thank you.